Okay, so I skipped over lesson 7 mostly because it's almost the same exact thing as lesson 6, except moving in the Y direction as opposed to the X direction. So if you figured out 6 or follow along the video, you should be able to figure out 7 without too much trouble. Now, 8, this one is going to be most of the rest of the puzzles that we're going through all involve what we're doing in 8. So if you kind of skip over this and you're like, yeah, whatever, everything else isn't going to really be able to work because it depends on the code that you put in. So they're keeping the code that you have throughout the rest of this entire lesson. So you need to make sure that you do each and every part and that it functions and works the way that it's supposed to in order to get your final game to work. And this is the part that I'm actually going to grade. I'm going to go in and look at your flyer game and see if you are able to figure out how to get this to work correctly. So I'm going to try to do the first couple steps here and then do another video with the next few steps. So it's all going to build upon each other. So if you really need help for the whole thing, you're probably going to have to watch all the videos. I'm sorry. But it should be able to step you through everything that you need to do in order to get this flyer game to work correctly. So, increasing a sprite's Y velocity inside the counter pattern can simulate gravity. By adding user interactions, you can make your sprite appear to jump as well. For starters, you'll make a single jump and then make it more realistic looking in the next level. And so they've already put in a sprite. A sprite has been created for you that falls because its Y velocity is increased inside the draw loop. You'll need to make this sprite appear to jump. So in order to do this, all you need to do is inside the if block that checks whether the up arrow has been pressed, you set the sprite's velocity to -5. And so that's really all you got to do right here. They have all of the code ready for you. If you run this, you see that the flyer starts in the middle, and then he slowly starts to sink down, and he'll increase in speed as he goes down. This is, of course, simulating gravity. When we jump off of a building, our rate of descent starts kind of slow, and then as we go closer to the bottom, it speeds and speeds up until ultimately we're at a fairly high speed, depending on how high we were when we jumped, as we impact the ground, which would not be a good thing if it was us jumping. Hopefully you have a parachute or you're just in a video game or something. So in order to offset the negative velocity, or in this case, the positive velocity, because remember, coming down with Y, we start at 0 at the top and 400 at the bottom. So as we come down, we're increasing our velocity. In order to offset that, we set the Y velocity as a -5. And what that does is it moves this automatically and has it start going up. But it's not going to go up forever, because it still has this counter pattern going on here. So even as we set it to 5 when we push the up arrow, it's the next frame it's going to be 4.9 and then 4.8 and then 4.7. And so even though it goes up, it starts slowing down 4.7, 4.6, 4.5, 4.4 and on up until it gets to 0, and then it starts coming down again. So if we just do this and we say sprite.velocity_y, which is what they instructed us to do, we're going to change our character velocity y to -5 when we push the up arrow. And so then when we reset and we click run, then as he goes down, if I push the up arrow, he jumps up. And he goes up, and then he slows, and then he comes back down again. If I push up again, then he's going to go up again a certain amount of time until he slows, and then he's going to start accelerating back down. So I can just jump on up. Each time I jump up, it just sets it to that -5, and then it slows it down until it starts coming back down the screen. And then if we just let it go, it goes really quickly. And you can see you'd have to push the up arrow a couple times in order to get it to reappear again. So that's for that first stage in setting that that flyer up. And now what we're going to do on the next stage is we want to have it float to the right. So now that you're using the counter pattern with the sprite's y velocity to simulate gravity and jumping, if you use the sprite's x velocity in the counter pattern, then you can make your sprite float from side to side as well. So in this level, you'll make your sprite start floating to the right when the right arrow is pressed. So you add an if statement inside your draw loop below the one you created for the up arrow, which you didn't create, it was already there for you, you just filled it in. Use the key down block to make the if statement respond when the right arrow is pressed. Inside the if block, use the counter pattern with the sprite dot velocity x block to add 0.1 to the sprite's x velocity. So, as it says, we just follow it step by step. We're going to do a control. The first thing, add an if statement. So we're going to do that after our up arrow if statement inside of our draw loop. Okay. We're going to use the key down block to make the if statement respond when the right arrow is pressed. So under world here, we find key down. We go ahead and drag that on in. You just click on this little arrow here, and we're going to select right. And then we're going to use the counter pattern. Remember, been trying to emphasize this through all these videos. Counter pattern means we set something equal to itself, and then we add something to it. And so in this case, we are having the sprite.velocity x be the thing that we are setting equal to itself. So we are going to grab this sprite.velocity x, put it here, and counter pattern means we need to add. So we go to the math option here. We get an add. Okay, and so they're going to add 0.1 is what we're going to add to it. So 0.1. And then we also need to put in here another sprite.velocity x. But of course, our program is not going to work if we leave it as sprite.velocity x because we don't have anything named sprite. We have a character is our sprite. So we have to change character here, change character here, and, oh, I forgot an A. There we go. Okay, so now when we run it, if we push the up arrow, then it's going to jump up. And if we hold the right key down, then it's going to start floating to the right. The longer we hold it, the faster to the right it's going to go, because it's increasing that velocity. It's not moving the position, it's increasing the velocity that we've put on it. So if I just, let's reset that then. So if I push the up arrow and then I just tap the right arrow once, you can see it's slowly moving to the right, which you're not really seeing too well because it's going so slow. But if I hold it down a little bit, you can see now it's got a constant velocity that it's moving to the right, which is different than before when I held down the right arrow and it sped up going to the right. So there you have it. You're using the counter pattern to have it float to the right. And I'm pretty sure if you continue in the lesson, the next one's going to have you do the same thing going to the left. So we're just going to finish this level and finish this recording because it's getting kind of long.